Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hello, and welcome. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And Michael. Michael and Rob, we should have figured out an order first. But if you're watching the video feed, there they are on your screen. The placard is different. We have Rob and Michael joining us today. And you know that if the four of us are here, you know what it means.
Double feature.
It is a double feature scenario. Welcome. Hey, Rob, welcome. Happy to have you here. How you doing, Rob?
Good.
Rob is in the middle of fringing. It is the Twin Cities Fringe Festival here. So Rob is seeing like 14 shows a day. So his brain is mush, but he is here to bring what little of that mush he's taken the mush, he's put it in his hands, he's made a little patty out of it, and he's gonna just suck whatever he can out of it. How are you, Michael? How are things out in Los Angeles?
Super awesome. I say, yeah,
super. And of course, my good friend Ryan. How are you, Ryan?
I'm fine. I'm not mushing any patties over here, but I'm doing okay. I've got a lot going on.
Well, that's good. You know, when your life is not mushing patties. Yeah, well, I think that's a win. That's a tally in the win column.
I still have my patties mushed for me by others, and I feel like that's a sign of first world success in the Harris household.
Decadent mushed patties. All right. Well, yeah, we are here. It is another double feature episode. When was the last time? Were we about a month and a half, 2 months? When did we last do that?
Couple
Not too
months
long ago.
Yeah, so I'm assuming all of you in listener land, I'm assuming all of you went out and watched all 8 of those films, and I'm sure you loved it and we're like, my God, I can't wait for 8 more. And we have that for you. We have that for you today, and we have a wonderful variety. I think we have, just kind of another wide gamut of films, but again, these are double feature ideas. We think that these are 2 movies that would make for a great, if you have an evening or an afternoon, a rainy afternoon, and you're looking for a couple films to watch. You could do worse than choosing any of these little pairings that we have. But what we do have this time, that we haven't had the last time, is we have a brand new sparkling mushed patty of a double feature jingle. Here we go. Rob and Michael and Ryan and Joel, double feature.
That screams class. That's what that does.
I think you're right. I think when you hear something like that, it is absolutely a symbol of, I mean, frankly, I'm disappointed that we're not all in tuxedos. All right. So as the jingle implied here, now we're not actually going to do it like this isn't always what it's going to be, but the order of that jingle is actually the order that we are going to talk about the movies today. So today, first, we're going to take a trip back in time with Rob, and our first movie
way
that we're going
back to before there were cars.
And
or maybe not that far back, but
no, because it wasn't that far back, because of course this the title of this movie was made famous by the Monkees with their famous song "The Night Train to Munich and Meet You at the Station." I think that's how it went. No, but it is 1940s Night Train to Munich.
Yeah, and you can say the other one up front.
Yeah, and so our first pairing is Night Train to Munich and Went the Day Well?
And,
Question mark.
Question marks in a
sort
title.
of,
Bad luck.
Early British war propaganda films, basically. But I think they're two of the best. The first one's sort of a thriller that takes place in the year leading up to Great Britain entering World War II. And the conclusion happens on the day that Great Britain declared war on Germany. So it really leads up to that. What's interesting is this came out in Great Britain in August of 1940, and let's see, I have a note somewhere. Great Britain entered the war in September 3rd, 1939. So in less than a year, they had this film out, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I think
that stock footage really helped a lot in the early chapters, I think.
Yeah.
But,
I know the other one. I know when sorry.
The amazing thing about these movies is that they both were made while World War II was raging.
Yep.
That
in Europe and the Battle of Britain was going on, and that's the stunning thing about them.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
It's like, wow, what they, it's a kind of incredible.
Yeah, and these were the first. I mean, I know Went the Day Well, but these aren't like official propaganda films. These are just right. Filmmakers telling stories in and in an effort to, I guess, probably deal with the emotions that they're dealing with. Yep. And also to just show their pride for their country. Right. So it's not like these were, officially, what's the word I'm looking for? They weren't conscripted to do this.
Sponsored or whatever. Yeah.
Although the British film industry is largely and has always been somewhat government sponsored. Yeah. But not in any way like you're thinking. Like they weren't put together by the Office of Propaganda, and they weren't artistically answerable to anybody like that. Right. When you could certainly tell with the first one, Night Train to Munich, which it's weird because they are kind of sort of serving the same purpose, but Night Train is really very stiff upper lip British filmmaking. Carol Reed, let's have a bit of fun with the war and poke the Nazis in the nose for good measure. Right. And it carries that tone even when they're shooting at each other at the end, and it's exciting. It's still very super light on its feet. But it's fun, and the two main characters are adorable. This has got to be the oldest film I've ever seen
Rex Harrison.
Rex Harrison and I've seen him as a young man in a couple of things, but that character is so cool, and that the suave upper class British agent obviously is the thing that's in every movie as long as there's been movies. But I really, really dig him, and I think she's really wonderful. I actually found the movie a little difficult to follow at first. I watched the beginning of it twice before I carried on with it. I don't think that's not really a knock on the movie. It's got this complicated setup with there's a whole double cross and stuff that happens at the beginning of the movie. And I wasn't really following easily who was who, because they kept cutting back between these different offices and different countries with different people I didn't know. And I didn't need to go back and watch it again. I just really thought, I'm not getting it, and I'm not going to be able to talk about it. Like, I had that sort of fear. But I think if I had just kept watching it, all the pieces fall into place, and then everything sort of, I think, clears itself up. But that's a thing too, right, Rob? I mean, when a movie just goes, you don't need to know everything or who everyone is. I mean, will faith that people will figure it out and won't sit there.
Yeah, I think it comes from a time when they expected the audience to be paying attention. And so they're not spoon feeding everything.
Right.
My wife likes to watch things while doing things on her phone as well, which I've learned to just block out and accept and whatever. But she was sort of lost.
I was
because you'd have
looking right at it, and I was kind of lost. So I really do think it's, I don't think it's a criticism. I think it's just it just gets going, and it just doesn't spoon feed you anything. It really does. I don't know if it's require that you pay attention, but which I think most good movies do. I think it just takes for granted that you'll don't worry, you'll catch up. You'll get there in the end. It's very British in that way, the way it starts. And I love, in the end, I liked it for that. And I love when it was a little disorienting watching all the cuts between the marching and stuff. Although I loved that music they kept playing over and over again. That was really neat. I don't know. Is that something, or was that something made for the movie? I feel like it's,
I don't know.
I feel like that little German theme, it goes away as the movie goes on. But early on, whenever they show the people marching into Poland or whatever, you get that music, which is fantastic. And the black and white photography especially once we're on the train and in the stations and up in the mountains and in the rail cars, like it's gorgeous and simple, but action, but still really linear and fun and exciting. I had a really, really good time by the time it was over.
For me, that second half of that film, when they're on the train, when we get Charters and Caldecott characters,
yes,
who they were actually in 6 films as those characters. The first one is Alfred Hitchcock's The Lady Vanishes, which is also set on a train.
Cricket Mad,
written by the same guys. They're so much fun. I love that they pop up again.
They take a little of the danger out of the thing. I don't know if that's their effect on most of the movies that they show up in, but you wouldn't trade them for anything because they're so super entertaining, those two chaps.
And they're so into cricket. Like, cricket's the most important thing, but like a true English citizen, when the going gets tough, they step
doing
up.
their part, right? Which is a big, it's that little fun part of this movie. It's the huge part of the next one.
This was the only film of all of these that I didn't see. Michael, did you get a chance to see this one?
Yes.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this. I mean, I kind of thought about when we had the discussion about Victory and how I thought it didn't take the situation it was in seriously, and this didn't either, but I didn't have that same problem. Like the comic relief, I called them Abbott and Costello. I thought they were hysterically funny. I mean, the fact that they kept getting moved, and I was so thoroughly entertained by the German woman that was kind of handling the in and out of the train, the conductor, whatever. I thought she was hysterical. But I was really invested in this. It was a lot of fun. It was very entertaining. And I was really impressed with the miniature work, certainly in the opening scenes with the camp. And I kind of agree with you guys. It was a little bit difficult to get into it. But one of my things is I watched some crappy version on YouTube. So it was a little tinny. So it was just a matter of kind of acclimating to how it sounded and looked on that crappy version. But
I was lent really by my buddy Rob the Criterion Blu-ray, and it was just pristine and immaculate.
And I'm not fantastic. That familiar with Rex Harrison's work, and so I mean, of course, I saw him in the opening credits, but then it didn't register until the end. I'm like, oh my god, that was Rex Harrison. He was fantastic.
For top bill, is he top billed, or is
think the female
Thackeray
is, right?
top billed?
I'm not.
It doesn't really matter for what is ostensibly the hero of the story. He comes into the movie super late.
I just love all the mishaps and the things that, kind of what happens in the next one as well. These little things where you're just like, as an audience, oh my God, no. Just these little things that, are going to throw them off track. And, like when one of the Abbott and Costello kind of recognizes, and I'm like, oh, just shut up. But that tells you how invested you are, because I was very concerned.
What's his name? Dickie. What's his name?
Dickie Randall.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you be old Dickie Randall? I mean, he walks right up in front of Gestapo. This guy who's undercover. Of course, they do their part then to make it right, but they don't even make the connection that they effed this up. They just it's super funny. It's really, really ridiculous, but it's, as you say, it's full of tension. You know, I don't want to compare them because they're not comparable, but that tension is enjoyable for an audience. You know, like the tension in like Roger Ebert didn't like Big Business, you know, because he just thought it was something that a movie about something that never happened until it finally happened. But there's tension in that. There really is comedic tension in these near misses and almost things and little tiny little things that get in your way and cause you to go, ooh, but it's at a different experience with the same sort of thing in the next film, but the in this one it's all fun, you know. But I think you really, the movie tricks us early on, and I think that's great because you're not sure it's all going to work out, but you're pretty sure it's all going to work out. The film would be dastardly for bringing in two bumbling comedic characters in the third act and then not have people mostly make it out okay.
Right.
And you just feel that comfort with those guys. It's like, well, these poor guys aren't going to be the ones that cause, you know, what's her face to get killed on the way to Switzerland or whatever. That can't. Yeah. That would be horrible. Well, so you're safe, but there's still tons of tension in them sneaking around and their whole plan. None of their plans go right at all, ever. Well, Dickie's got to think on his feet, and it's fun.
The other striking things, kind of on a different subject, is you're talking about that stock footage of Hitler and the Nazis. And when I went to the IMDb page, of course, he's listed as one of the actors, and it was kind of surreal to see that. And it was very odd, you know, but he is in it, you know, and it's
uncredited featured people. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a very, and I want to go back to what you guys talked about quickly, is that that this was made while this was going on is just, and the second film is so strange.
It was made right after this stuff happened. I mean, it was just in the shadow of the actual events, and it was all still going on.
It was all still happening, you know, and it's so weird to me. Like I guess I look at movies as like historical pieces. No, they're made 30, 40 years after the fact. No, this was made while it was happening. It's very odd.
I think that's why it can get away with being lighthearted at times or taking a lighter touch than with Victory. It's sort of like, I get what you were saying with Victory, Michael. And with this one, it's like, but this is like, they're living through this.
Up their spirits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and went the day well. At Ryan's talking about the tension of Night Train in Munich. Went the day well. Went the day well lays it out there right at the beginning. It tells you what the ending is. It's the matter of how we're going to get there.
Yeah, but the how really is something.
Yeah, no, and the how is something else
in this one.
Absolutely, but it's
at the beginning. It it acknowledges that Great Britain won the war. But they haven't yet.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
it's
a
pretend movie looking back on a fake incident in the war, but it's still...
And it was... I mean, it's it's essentially Britain's version of Red Dawn.
Yep.
That's well said. That's actually is what it is for a nice and semi-modern reference.
And from the top, like Brian said, it's this fictional thing, and they tell you like, the Germans tried to take over England, but this is the only little portion they got, and then we took it back, and essentially, here's how we did it, and that's it was wonderful.
That's what was so fascinating about this opening is that obviously that's kind of inherent in the fourth wall breaking dialogue that we get there. But Elwood and I are sitting, and then as soon as you start seeing the happiness and kind of niceness of this village, Elwood turned to me, he's like, this is not going to be good. This is I can already tell this is, I mean, they set it up beautifully that there's going to be a great fall here. And I don't want to talk too much because I want Rob to, this is his movie, but this was my favorite of the 8 films we screened this time. And I was so surprised at how brutal this movie was. It did not pull punches where Night Train to Munich, every shot that was fired, they'd kind of cut away before you saw anything, and you got a few like falling down. But Went the Day Well was horrifying. I was
they cut away and Went the Day Well too, but the violence, well, they really do. They don't really show you anything, but the violence in it for its time, just like we say on the show, what happens in that movie is what happens in the story, and you get this succession of stuff that I can't think of an equivalent 40s film that has anything like some of that stuff in it.
No one was safe in this movie.
No.
Yeah.
And they did show things. I mean, the runaway kid, no, you saw that happen.
Yeah, but it's still in a bloodless sort of.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't expect blood and gore, but the fact that you see him actually hit.
Yeah.
You know, and the same with, I mean,
you don't just see the guy shoot and hear birds fly away or whatever the little gimmicks of the time are. That is true.
But the thing that destroyed me, like literally upset me to some deep level, was the Lady of the Manor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
That moment was
the hatchet.
No,
the hatchet was crazy.
The hatchet was crazy, but this is the grenade and
yeah.
That moment was that one was there was an Jennifer was sitting next to me when I was watching it, and that one she literally was like, "What happened? You okay?" And I went, "Yeah, fine." She goes, "You literally shuddered." Like I shook the bed that we were on.
But there were multiple moments of that all throughout this. It was really powerful, and I was so pleased with the fact that you didn't necessarily get to know all these characters all that well, but you know, I think it was also the fact that the traitor, I mean, his comeuppance was so beautifully done.
Right.
You know, and I didn't know what to expect. I'm like, she's going to screw this up, whatever. Why? Because immediately when it's revealed, Elwood and I are screaming at the TV, say something. And then to see where it actually goes was, I think that's why you like the characters so much, even though you don't know them that well, knowing what they're up against and particularly who they're
very familiar from other movies and just from the roles of the people of an English village in general, you know, the vicar, this whole group of people. So there's so many of them in the ensemble that you get to know a couple more better than others, but there isn't that focus on these two people like a lot of films, but they
do spend the first third of the film, you know, just showing you
regular old life. And even a little more than that, the early part of the occupation is still subterfuge. And so they're really familiar, and I think that's kind of important. And the movie gets a lot of mileage out of that.
I was also impressed with the female contingent in there. They kicked ass. Like it was a lot of you stand by. No, what can we do? And then they did.
The preacher's daughter character, I had only ever seen her in the was she in The Tenant? Is that the Polanski film that she's in, Rob?
Oh,
so as an older woman, you know, and I knew she was great, but she was a really great stage actor and really she did a handful of significant movies, but just a handful over a pretty long career. And she was wonderful in this. I mean, they were all really, really good, but everything she was doing, I'm impressed. She was supernatural in this role, and yet you were aware of if you watch enough stuff, you're aware of these really interesting choices that she was making as an actor, and it really hit that sweet spot, hit the balance between those things in a wonderful way. So I was delighted to see her, but everybody was really good in it.
The other things that really stood out to me about this film is that there was no time wasted in anything. Like that's a good example of what she did in her last moment with the traitor. There was no, how could you do this? It just happened. The same with the woman with the axe. So there was no time for her to even understand what she'd just done before she got her retaliation. And I really think that's a big part of why the movie's so powerful, because there's no sugarcoating, you know, there's nothing like that. It just is so abrupt and everything.
And Hatchet related killing the side her response to having killed somebody was really, really visceral too. And for a film of this era, stunning. So
same with one of the other women when she actually, when they're shooting, when they're defending, trying to stop the soldiers from coming in the manor, and she hits one, and then she's like, and they're like, what's wrong? What's the matter? And they're like, well, I got one.
I just killed someone.
And just that little moment was just really wonderful, and it was worth the 18 seconds or whatever it was that it took for them to kind of honor that moment, and it was it was great.
So I mean, just in the spirit of the double feature, just as these are teasers for folks, When the Day Well is a small British village, and a German force comes in disguise as British troops, saying they're doing an exercise. Right. And gradually it's revealed that they are German troops. The villagers are all gathered together, and the Germans are trying to hold this village until another force can land, so they have to hold it for a certain amount of time, and it's about the village people risking everything, making the ultimate sacrifice to stand up to
what it is, even though it doesn't feel like it, but what it was at the time. It exploits a real fear that the Brits had, that they were going to be invaded. They weren't. The Isle of Jersey was, and it had nothing like this dramatic that happened there. Some stuff, but nothing like this. So this is as some snippet of a war thing, this is a complete fantasy in that it exploits a real fear that they had that didn't happen, and that they keep repeating the motif that they did their part and we fought back, and that even though that's a big bloody emotional mess that's really affecting and kind of terrible, it's still a fantasy that we did our part in the war effort. These people in these little villages just sitting there being scared all the time. And there is something, even when it's handled in a realistic way like this, there's something cathartic about being able to fight back and being able to take out a few Germans in whatever weird way, being able to defend, even the school teacher, which we touch, or school teacher, she's not that, but the one who's overseeing the children, that scene is amazing. Even that's a fantasy. You make, as you the terms you use, this ultimate sacrifice to save those under your protection. I mean,
but even though you're calling it a fantasy, I bought into it. It's like, it feels like,
but
there's no way.
As a historical movie, it's a complete farce. Nothing like this happened at all.
It was a contemporary movie. There were still 3 years left of the war.
Yeah, true. But the idea, by the time this film came out, the idea of a German physical invasion is pretty much nil. That's not really the point. The people who were living through this got super into it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when we were talking about it, it's amazing. When you lay down the premise, it's just stupid and ridiculous. You don't have a whole group of Germans come into England and all be mistaken for English people for like a week. That idea is absurd. It's almost absurd that Rex Harrison can do it in reverse by himself, let alone that all these infantrymen or whatever from Germany could pull it off. It's stupid.
I get that, but I'm saying, as far as storytelling, I bought into it, and you had plenty of those little clues. When they go in and the German soldier can only say no. Yeah. And all of those little insights, I think, were so brilliantly set up. The little pad of paper, with the different 7, all those little things. It's like, I agree. In reality, yes, this is not going to happen. But as far as storytelling, I think it was so expertly done, and in every way. Like, I already posted my Letterboxd review, and I gave it a perfect score. I loved this movie. I couldn't believe how intense it was. Like you said, for this era, that's crazy.
It is crazy.
And I think it is intense like that, and visceral and harsh, because as opposed to Night Train in Munich, which does take a lighter touch, is the people of Great Britain were in the war at this point. They were aware of all these harsh realities. They had all made sacrifices, lost people. were in fear that something like this could happen. And there was a need to pull the punch, because you don't need to tell these people, make light of it, because they know the reality.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't reality at all.
Right.
That I'm just pointing that out. It's just not a.
What?
Well,
They had a fear that this could have happened. And,
it exploits a very, very real fear, especially when they started making it more than when it started rolling out in theaters. Yeah.
I mean, it was released in Great Britain in 1942. That's still fairly early in the war.
But
might have been made in 1941.
But it's after this sort of thing had already happened in the war.
Right. The only part that really strained credulity was when what's her face? Valerie Taylor just had, and she just yelled, "Wolverines!" That was the only part that I was like,
I think it's masterfully done. I mean, don't get me wrong when I'm ripping on it. I just want people to understand when they're going into it. Like, this doesn't represent anything at all. Normally, when you watch and it's part of, because of, like Rob said, where it was made, it was this fear, this very real, incredibly real fear that they had still. And it's based on that premise. But when you watch a war movie that's about a war that has this little event, it really is more like Red Dawn, which is also a big fascist Reagan era fantasy, where look at us gun collecting redneck kids, man. We're the one that are going to fight back and keep America free. That whole idea is just completely absurd. And it's no less absurd here. But
I never went into this thinking, is this a true story? I mean, I gathered.
Yeah, it doesn't say inspired by a true story.
Exactly.
We don't.
But they say it is. They say it is when you're watching it.
Well,
you don't get.
The guy literally looks you in the eye.
The war's been won. So
he looks at you and says,
"So it's all a lie."
Incredible.
That's just.
Story.
It's important to note that
it's a story. It's not a lie. It's a story.
Let's move on to
that narrator character is just lying. He does nothing but lie. The rest of the movie, I'll give you, is a kind of an expert story. But
only thing I really wanted from him,
just making shit up.
I really wanted from him at the very beginning to just be like, "Oh, didn't see you there. Thanks for stopping by." And that's that's the only thing I really wanted. All right, let's move.
It's like nothing else I've ever seen. It really wasn't a spectacular thing. And this double feature in this order, it's wonderful the way the first movie, the way they're related, and yet the first movie sets you up for not being prepared at all for the second movie. And that's what a great double feature is. So I just kudos to the big picture as well, because it was those were amazing. I'd never heard of It Went the Day Well, and I'd never seen Night Train to Munich, and it was fantastic way to spend the afternoon watching old war movies. Really awesome.
Speaking of lighthearted, let's move on to Michael's double feature. It's hard to even. There's no way to intro these movies. It is Birth from 2004 and 2017's The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Two lighthearted romps with Nicole Kidman as our tour guide.
Oh wait. Yeah. Well, hold on, Michael. I thought you picked this because the lead character was named Anna in both films, but is it because Nicole Kidman is the star of both?
This is the interesting thing. I chose it because of Nicole Kidman. I also chose it because, in my mind, neither of these films fit any sort of category.
Not easily. I would agree with you there.
Then the other thing I realized last night as I was falling asleep, because I just revisited these both yesterday, is that it's also upper class rich people being invaded by a lower caste child, and it totally ruins their status quo. And I'm like, that wasn't my intention when I chose them. And then I realized, wow, that's a very big common theme for both films. But I mean, very quickly, Birth is Nicole Kidman plays Anna, who's lost her husband 10 years ago. She's remarrying. She lives in super luxury. and this 10-year-old boy comes back and says, "I'm your dead husband." And that's kind of the setup for that. And so I guess we can talk about that.
Hilarity ensues. Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, the thing about Birth, I saw that right after its release, and to this day, it's one of my favorite films. I don't know how to quite describe it. It's not like other movies, in tone, in the way it's shot, in the way the music works, and I don't know. I've been in love with this film for 15, 17 years, whatever it's been since it was out. But it's just so odd. And I think one of the things that stands out to me, I think it's one of Nicole's best performances. And the thing that I always go to when I talk about this is the symphony scene. So it's right after she has this experience with the young kid who she's telling, leave me alone, basically. And then it's this long shot of her and Danny Houston, who plays her new fiance, walking into the symphony. And it's literally 5 minutes of just the music playing and a close-up on her as she's trying to figure out what has just happened. And you see all these emotions just running the gamut through her eyes and the way she's listening and thinking. And it's so stunning to me. And yeah, I mean, I just love this film. I love the fact that it's so kind of open-ended, not for the Anna character. She knows what she knows, but it's haunting. It's a very odd subject matter. And the fact that it goes where it goes it's crazy. But the mood of this film, I think, is the real star. That and the score by is Alexandre Desplat. Desplat, is that how you say it? I think this is one of his
just
early scores.
Just an absolute genius.
It's so beautiful and weird. So that's my take. I adore this film.
Yeah, beautiful. Right from the start, you're seeing things they don't usually show on films, those park drives and stuff in New York. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it really is a world of luxury. You couldn't live next to all those little bridges and walkways and stuff unless you're loaded. And there's that sense that it's this old money and that these people live in this isolated world. And the movie doesn't really travel outside of it ever, right? I mean, you go to the symphony, but the symphony just
you go to the
represents
kids' house briefly. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. But it's still, mostly it's this, you're secluded, you're sequestered into the world of these people. And that there's I don't know what you call it when you're scared of like being locked in the closet or whatever. There's a claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with you about Nicole. Stunning. This film when it came out, and it's such a shame because it doesn't have a good tomato score even, because the critics at the time, well, you'd think the critics would at least have got it and liked it, or at least appreciated that they were getting something different for a change. But it had the controversial bathtub scene in it, which is just sort of sucked all the discourse out of the thing. That's all anyone would talk about. It's neat when you get something in your movie that wasn't a big hit or wasn't seen by millions and millions of people. And it's talked about, like, that's good, but it didn't help this film at all. And it's criminal that it didn't. It's criminal that we're such babies at the time, and even worse now that we couldn't see past that to what this was all.
It's not even the bathtub scene that was so striking to me yesterday watching it. It's the scene with the kid when he goes to Anne Heche's house.
Yes.
And what she says to him is unreal. Yeah. I won't say what it is, but you're sitting there listening to it, and Heche is pretty spectacular in this film. I mean, she's got a smaller role, but she sells it. And
this was a star-making role for her. You know what I mean?
And she's fantastic.
Her biography sort of became really complicated, but after this movie, she was auditioning with all the top ladies in Hollywood for all the biggest roles for about the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, the other bonus of this film is, I mean, you got Peter Stormare, you got Arliss Howard, you got Lauren Bacall as the matriarch.
Oh my God.
And Ted Levine shows up in a small.
Who's the other woman, the in-law sister? She's one of my favorite actors of all time, and you don't get to see her in very many things, Joel. I've been sitting
Allison Elliott.
Allison Elliott, thank you. Allison's got this moment, and it's great because we are feeling what she's feeling. She's just got this moment during this. They're sitting down to dinner or something. She just said, just stop this. And she's so, we feel the same way. Like, we've come to this point of frustration, but Allison fills it with just her looks. And this is a tiny role compared to these other people Michael's mentioning, but you can track her incredulity and anger throughout the thing. And there's a lot of privilege wrapped up in that. This kind of thing doesn't happen to us, this crazy, weird stuff. It's not supposed to happen to us. And it's not a thing to be tolerated, but her intolerance of it comes from a very real place. It's very
well.
Very
the other thing I want to point out is I think Danny Houston is exceptional in this. I mean, the piano sequences. I'm seeing this film many times, and yesterday my jaw just dropped.
Yeah,
I'm like, this is it is this disruption of what these people see as a norm that they've achieved, and it's so uncomfortable in so many ways. I mean, I'll let you guys other talk, but every time I watch this film, it's hypnotic to me. Yes, I can't turn
hypnotic
away.
Is right. Michael, I never would have seen, I saw this much later. I didn't see it at the time. I saw it because you said, you got to see this. I don't remember. We were just trading recommendations or whatever. And I went and saw it right away because it wasn't so much your passion about it, because I don't share a lot of the same passions with you in different movies, so I have to be careful when I go watch something. But this one, you were so sure I would love it that I was like, well, I gotta watch it like right now. It was awesome. And I'll just say one last thing before we turn it, Rob, before we get you weighed in on Birth, because it really is extraordinary. The world of privilege and world of the rich and stuff like that, none of that, there's no conversation that hits that on the head. That's all just a thing that the movie earns between the lines, which is another thing that I think is sort of incredible. It's not even what it's really about, but it is a weight that is on the shoulders of the thing from every second, from the beginning to end.
Well,
and we didn't mention the kid's name, Cameron Bright, who's a pretty good actor, but was used in the exact same way in a successive amount of worse movies, so that the world sort of got sick of him. But in this film, he's just otherworldly and incredible, and it's just beautiful. Like, if you just like really pretty, wonderful, beautifully composed and lit films. Who shot this, Joel? Can you remind us, the cinematographer?
Sorry, I was just looking at Cameron Bright. Here, give me a second.
Sure.
Thank you, IMDb, for that ad. I appreciate it.
That's great. It took the wind out of my sails.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Cameron was X-Men Last Stand. He was in a bunch of things. He's in a great episode as a teenager of the 400, I think the show was called. As a dumb show. But his special power was charisma, basically. He could just say stuff, and all the kids in his high school would buy into it. And of course, by the end of the episode, this makes him a little mini dictator. It may just be a kid who just wants to party and have fun, but nevertheless has this mob of people at his every word. And it was genuinely creepy.
Cinematography on Birth was Harris Savides Savides.
It doesn't ring a bell, but props.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear what Rob thinks of this.
Okay, so there are two films in the double features that I had not seen. This was one of them. And I watch it with my wife and my son, Alex. And when you're watching with three people in our house, there's a lot of pausing to get another drink, to go to the bathroom. But every time we pause, we're like, okay, so do we think it's real? Do we think he really is a reincarnation? And oddly, that conversation continued after the end of the film.
Yep.
Where I feel like it's pretty clear at the end what did happen because of what Anne Heche's character reveals.
Yes.
But my wife had kind of missed part of that. It's like she'd missed a line of dialogue or something, and she still believed at the end something different than Alex and I did.
It's, even if you catch it all, it's legit to still carry that feeling with you out of the movie. Anyway, it really is.
Does believe it clearly.
Right.
You
and
know,
maybe that's all that's important.
What's me is the clue in that it's legit is what Bright says in his voiceover in the end. No one really knows what was wrong with me.
Right.
And that to me tells me that this was legit.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh.
I believe that it was. I mean, certainly Anna believes that.
Yeah,
and I think that it's one of the most, I think, haunting endings of anything that I can remember in recent years. It's so upsetting to see her mental state at the end. It's so primal, and because she believes it.
And it doesn't have to be an either or either. It could be a scam and still be true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, obviously that's where Michael landed. I can see that. I mean, I really can. I think that's a legit way of looking at it. The film, it's not like it's open-ended. It explains everything. But it is open-ended. And then you've got to decide. But it is important that it's Anne's journey that we go on, and it absolutely is there with her. So that's a reality of a type that I think is
now that you say that, here's one of the things that I was I didn't really care for the movie. It was beautiful, it's all, but I mean ultimately it's like, okay, yeah, I saw that. But to me, one of the strikes that was against it, but I will, after listening to you, Michael, I sort of feel like maybe this actually strengthens the argument, is Sean, the Sean that has passed away, is an asshole.
Yep.
Yeah.
And not just for what we learn about him, but from the moment we see young Sean, this is if we are to believe this is real, this is a guy who has been reincarnated into a 10-year-old boy, and he's like, I'm here to stop your wedding. You're mine. You're my wife.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're a dick. So it's like, and so to me, that was like totally a strike against it, and a reason why I never believed that this is. But listening to you talk, Michael, this absolutely might be a thing in favor of the idea that it was true that he was reincarnated, because this guy would be that kind of a jerk. He would go, no, she's, yes, I may have done all of these other horrible things to her when I was alive, but you know what? She's still my wife. He's it does become a strike against Anna that really this was the guy that you were into.
Yes.
Because this guy's a Neanderthal dick.
That's one of the things that on this recent viewing that I thought was so striking, is that, did you not realize that, I mean, she's infatuated so much that she can't let go in death, but do you not have any clue about what kind of person he was? Is it a defense mechanism? He was so perfect and I love him so much.
It's not as simple as that. She absolutely knows what he was. She's drawn to him anyway. And that's
why it's so wonderfully layered. There's so much going on for her character. It's like, she has to have known. And the other thing I want to mention, and then I know we probably have to move on, but it's like, I want to go back, and I didn't do it on this last viewing, but I want to go back, and are there any things that young Sean said or brought up that can't be easily explained away by the revelation we get through Anne Heche? Is there anything in there, like if you go back and watch it, is there anything that he brought up that can't easily be explained away, thus giving us the idea that this is legit?
Parsing the dialogue is an interesting idea, but I don't agree with what Joel's saying exactly, but what he's touching on is very real, which is she's this guy, when he was alive, was in command of her.
Yes.
That's how he wanted to be, and something in her wanted something like that in her life, or got addicted to it, or whatever it was. It's very, very nuanced, more than I'm just attracted to a dickhead, and so I'm a weak person that shouldn't be sympathized with in the movie. Like, I don't see it that way, but it is striking that the kid is that way. It's not like you're on his side, regardless of whether you're buying into the the central idea or not. I don't think I just don't think that's that important when you're in the final analysis of this film. We can talk about, well, is it or isn't it? But it's complex. It's complicated. She's a complicated person who's come to this spot. And when she finds some absurd chance to get back into this sort of poisonous relationship, absolutely can't help herself but sort of fall for it and believe in it.
Yeah.
And that's
good character writing, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that
I don't know what the movie would be like if he wasn't an asshole. I don't think it would be anything.
It would have been a little more saccharine, like just kind of.
I just don't know what it would be. I think the whole thing falls apart. He's domineering and controlling and manipulative, and that's surely all the things that he was before.
You get that nice little clue when Lauren Bacall is sitting with the kid in the hall, and all she says to him, "I never liked Sean." And that's a good clue, and additional clue that Sean, like you said, is a dick.
Right, clearly. Yeah. I mean, there's no debate there. That is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. So a couple things. First of all, I never thought the little boy Sean was being a dick or being possessive. I just saw it as, because we didn't know what the real Sean was like in the early stages. I just thought they had such a connection, such a true love, that he was coming back. It played like that for me. I didn't pick up on that, like, you're my wife kind of thing. If I had, I might have viewed the whole movie differently. But that just never occurred to me. The second thing was, I felt like, and we talked about this movie a lot, that Anna isn't maybe as bright as you think she will be for having a successful a high-paying job and things like that. And so maybe she didn't know what her husband was like. Maybe she was really easy to fool, because early in the movie, it was a little frustrating because she kept saying, why doesn't she just say something? Why don't they just follow up on this? Why did they kept making decisions that just sort of like left everything unanswered? They didn't seem to be doing what a rational person would do in terms of following up on this, or like, wait, what?
I see your point, Rob, but I don't see it as dimness. I see it as blinded. I don't see it as anything other than she just is so grief-stricken and overcome with emotion. She's not making sound choices. I mean, clearly when she says we're going to run away together, she's gone over the edge. Yeah.
Well, and the list of super, even hyper intelligent women we've known that end up with bad guys and vice versa, as long as your arm, it's inexplicable as to why you're drawn to another person.
Yeah.
And ultimately, and sometimes it's terrible for you, but you can't help it.
Before we move on to Killing of a Sacred Deer, at the time we're recording this, Anne Heche has just recently passed away.
Yeah.
And we would be remiss to not, again, as we mentioned, this is one of her, if not her best performance. Anne Heche is terrific in this movie.
It's on the very short list of her best ever performances.
Yeah, and though, as she in the most recent years, unfortunately her biography is going to reflect some of the issues that she had in real life, and it could be really easy to dismiss her as that crazy Anne Heche,
right?
And it's if you really want to, see why she was a star, and for a while one of the elite stars of Hollywood, it was a brief period of time, but for a while she was, at the top of a short list. It's performances like she gives in Birth, and so we just want to acknowledge that she's so good, and
the small extraordinary performance in the little film that launches you sort of into stardom. And her stardom was interrupted by her coming out and all this stuff that really shouldn't necessarily have had anything to do with that, but nevertheless got super entwined into it.
I chose this double feature long before what happened to her, and it didn't even dawn on me until yesterday. I'm like, oh, shit, Anne Heche is in this. But I mean, I want you to go back. I mean, performance-wise, everyone is phenomenal in this. But watch Anne Heche's eyes when she's confronting the kid. I love the way her eyes move. You know, she's so focused, and yeah, it's a really good performance in a sea of really good performances. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and as you said, this is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Danny Houston performances, and he's been elected in all kinds of things.
I'd like you to stop doing that.
And it's a fantastic chance for Lauren Bacall, because her later performances they're all good, because she's really good and she has this dignity about her that is unflappable and unshatterable. But this is the movie where this is the movie where it was worth coming out of retirement to be a part of something, even if it's a small part of it. And really Anne is extraordinary. And I really think people who only know Anne from, Ally McBeal or whatever, I think you go watch this, you're going to be rattled by it. And good for her. I know she had. I
might have explored this.
Good for her for being able to look through the camera at us and have this captured forever. That's the dream of every actor.
Watch her silent reactions when Nicole comes to visit her and Peter Stormare in their apartment. Yeah, because you don't know what's going on yet.
Yeah, but it was captivating my first time through. So
yeah,
yep. So Killing of a Sacred Deer is a movie that exists.
Oh, wow. Okay. Them's fighting
it's just that I say that with as little judgment as I can muster, because it is
but a whole bunch of judgment just came through.
Well, I just mean, like, it exists. I'm like, it is it is a movie unlike any other movie I've ever seen.
It's different.
Yeah, it is. It's a.
I mean, that's its calling card. Really, it's what is it? Michael said when he started.
I'm sure I will. I'm sure Yorgos Lanthimos, a writer director who, he is. Boy, imagine what his dreams are like. If this is what he's able to realize,
right?
Yeah, Lobster.
And The Favorite.
And The Favorite, which Joel loved. The Favorite.
I did. I love The Favorite. Yeah. This is a tough movie. This is a hard one.
I'll say this before we dive into it. This is a film that it's kind of mean to compel, although we can handle it because we watch a lot of movies, but this is a tough movie to compel somebody else to watch in an unprepared sort of way.
Yes. We dumped this on our buddy Daniel last night. He'd never seen it. So there was a lot of this.
And Daniel won't be coming around much anymore.
No, but I don't know if he'll like this anymore. But I saw this when I was still reviewing, and I gave it a 5-star score without hesitation. And 2 days later, I told my husband about it, and he's like, "Well, I need to watch it." I'm like, "Fine, I'll watch it again," and I did. Watching it last night, I think it holds up amazingly well. I think the thing that kind of, obviously the Nicole Kidman connection, and of course the kid thing, but it is that defies categorization category. I don't know what this is.
It was a horror movie circuit, which is why you were assigned to watch it in the first place. But among horror fans, I remember it only came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
Some people were like, "This is the greatest thing ever." And other people were like, "This is the worst thing I've ever seen. And I hate you for telling me to see it." Well, and that was the debate. It was really extreme sort of passions.
It's so, I'll use the term brutal again. It's brutal,
but it's not horror brutal in the way we think, although it certainly has its moments.
Torture. Yeah.
Yeah, it's psychological torture. That is the right word for this film.
All performances, they're at their top of their game. I've never really seen a lot of Colin Farrell. I think he's fantastic in this. But what sets this thing apart for me is...
Can I ask, why haven't you seen a lot of Colin Farrell? I mean, he's been in every other movie since he came on the scene.
It hasn't crossed my path. I mean, I want to say I've seen... I literally can't think of another Colin Farrell film.
That's weird to me. That's all I'm saying.
But it's again, like Birth, it's this very strange atmosphere that is very unnatural as far as cinema going, and it's just not a regular movie, and that's why I think it's so fun.
It's a look into a world that's really odd and unfamiliar. You know, even the architecture of the hospital, just every time we're in there, it just makes me feel weird. And the filmmaker knows that these these non-story things are going to unsettle you in a kind of brilliant way.
I mean, the story itself is great. You know, it's pretty simple, vengeance tale. But it's what sets this movie apart to me. The first time I saw it, I couldn't wrap my head around how much I adored the dialogue and the way it was delivered. It's this sort of unemotional, robotic, stilted delivery that everyone, even the children actors, understood and did it. And it's so appealing to me because it's odd. It's strange.
The opposite of Birth in this way, because I do see the connections. In this movie, everybody says everything all the time. They talk about everything explicitly. The debates between what's going on, what the threat is, you know, the ultimatum that comes down, and it's all there on the surface in the dialogue, and the dialogue does sort of crack in that way.
They have frank discussions about armpit hair and menstruation, and it's so weird. Weird is the only way to describe this, but for me, an immensely appealing way, because it's so out of the norm, but it's also such an interesting to watch the manipulation as the film goes on from so many pieces. You know, once Farrell has the ultimatum, and how you see the rest of his family approach him is gross. I mean, I cut my hair, Dad, just like you wanted me to. All those little things as it starts to get toward the climax. I'll shut up, but I think this movie is so powerful.
You want to, without spoiling it doesn't. It sort of rolls out its premise a little slowly, but you want to give it a premise. Or Joel, maybe you want to just read the old-fashioned synopsis.
Here's what the IMDb. Come on, IMDb, really? This also could be my internet here. Here we go. Stephen, a charismatic surgeon, is forced to make an unthinkable sacrifice after his life starts to fall apart when the behavior of a teenage boy he has taken under his wing turns sinister.
That pretty much sums it up. But it does not.
And it doesn't really reveal much.
Yeah, it doesn't really reveal much. It's a pretty good synopsis.
That's what I'm saying.
I have an issue with that synopsis. The word charismatic.
Yeah, charismatic. Thank you, Rob, because I was about to go. Yeah, that's the only thing that charismatic.
No one is. No one.
Right.
I want to believe that maybe that IMDb, whoever wrote that, was maybe being a little tongue in cheek, because there's
very little charisma in any of the characters in any of this guy's movies. Yeah. You know, it's all weird and awkward and stilted. The Favorite is that way. Lobster is a masterclass in awkward, non-charismatic characters.
I need to see that, because I like the other films of his I've seen. So
it's a comedy. It's a dark comedy, but it's a dark comedy. With the capital D and the A and the R and the K are also capitalized in that. But
Dogtooth is his as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So he means to torture us, and he does. Yes. I mean, in a way, that's where I admire this thing. And I'll say one thing. Rob's got something to say, which you got to let him definitely do. One of my favorite. I mean, I have mixed feelings about this movie. I don't like it. I'm mad at it. But I mean, I watch a lot of movies, and I had the same kind of reaction as Michael. I didn't walk out going, 10 out of 10, but I did walk out going, what's happening and why? What just happened?
You're disoriented
how do I?
by it.
You have to deal with it. You can't just walk on with your life after watching this movie. And so many movies are okay, what's for dinner?
Yes.
So many movies are like that. So I really, really admire that I got that experience from it, but I like an extreme experience. My favorite moment in this whole movie is it was improvised. It's kind of improvised. The director told Rafe Cassidy in that park scene just to sing him a song.
God.
Yeah. And
God.
And it because she's got stuff to do in the script. She's an extraordinary young actor, but she's got stuff to do in the script. But her through line when the talking isn't happening is extraordinary. And that song it's just the single. And I watched Joel. We did a whole pile of shows about them, the horror movies I watched that year. It was the creepiest, got under my skin moment in all the movies I saw during that calendar year, was her singing that weird pop song a cappella in the park to him.
Yeah.
Because it's just overflowing with dread. And I just hated it. And I desperately wanted it to stop. And it just kept going and going and going. And I was like, this is horrible. It's horrible. And so I think the movie's torture. I think you need to be careful before you watch it, but you got to know that it's what it is. But it is torture. It sets out to torture you and does.
Yeah.
It's amazing, I think, in a way.
Rob?
Okay. So
I'm afraid now.
This was my second time seeing it. And when Michael announced this as part of his, I just sort of went, and, you know, as I was trying to fit these in long before Fringe would start up, because I was going to have no time in the weeks before. My wife's like, okay, well, we need to watch another one of those films. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to watch this one after you go to bed. I've seen it before. This is not for you. You know your audience. And that's why this is a hard one to just put out to the world, like Ryan was saying. Is like,
well, and Michael didn't really do that. People. We're not the world. We expect to be challenged and stuff, and we know Michael. Yeah. I just wanted to get it in there that
what I'll say about this film is I don't like it. It's similar, not in like level of greatness or anything like that, but in my feeling of A Clockwork Orange, where I recognize it as a director whose vision is all over the film. He wanted to do this. He succeeded, you know, brilliantly in terms of executing what he wanted to.
Yes.
The film has a unique and unifying feel to it, but I don't enjoy it. And I, not even in a way like Schindler's List, you don't enjoy watching it, but you're wowed by its mastery, and you do say that, yeah, that was a great film. This, I can't say that, because I just, you know, one of the things he accomplishes is having the actors all keep that same delivery style. But for me, it doesn't work. It just feels so fucking bizarre. Sorry. It's so distancing and off-putting. I liked it better the second time. In fact, when it was done, I was like, well, maybe you could have watched that, Mickey, but probably better you didn't.
Mickey only could have watched it the second time, and that you can't really do that without watching it a first time.
Right. So I did get more out of it the second time. The first time, my son Alex, he's like, oh, you gotta watch this. And you know, he loves this movie. So
wow.
This is his kind of thing, but he pretty much just likes silent foreign films. So this is sort of up his alley in terms of, I don't know. I connect to movies emotionally, and I couldn't find an Ian emotionally to this one. The second time through, knowing what I was getting into, I could appreciate the craft a lot more, and I could go with the story a little more, but I don't know how you say Barry Keoghan.
Keegan.
Yeah. I mean, he's freaking creepy. So that is a success. Like, if he was the only one who delivered the dialogue like that, I think I would have liked the movie better. If everybody else was grounded in a reality. But how can you ground this movie in a reality?
I don't think
a reality. The things that happen are just.
Well, they never tell you exactly.
It has its own reality.
Exactly. It is its own thing.
And I'll point out real quick too, we talked about the birth sequence of just focusing on Nicole's face, because they did that in this as well, in the spaghetti scene. And I wonder if Lanthimos was like, oh, remember that scene you did in birth that was so amazing? We're going to recreate that here. So it's just her listening and just her reactions in her eyes. And
she's a real asset to to Killing of a Sacred Deer, but I wish, I don't know, for obvious plot related reasons, Farrell's doctor is given a lot to do, and she's not given much to do. And it's not any fault of the movie. Even I just wish, if Nicole Kidman's going to show up, and she's going to be great like she is, I just wish the part be more worthy of her somehow. And I think in this movie it kind of can't be.
Yeah,
I think it's substantial.
That reminded me.
It is, but it isn't. It isn't. It's a lopsided housewife of a character in this story. No matter, even though, like you say, you just mentioned a moment where she's really kind of awesome in it. She's not that she's not awesome. It's just, it's she's not an equal partner in the story, and she's a big star and an amazing actor, and you feel that out of balance thing going on in it. That's all.
That scene in Birth where they're in the orchestra in the theater that you mentioned. Yeah. Now I need to see the movie again, because what distracted me in that scene from focusing on her reactions was Danny Houston keep leaning over and talking to her. And I just want to shout, you don't talk at the theater. But that was late, which is rude enough.
Yes.
And then you don't sit and have conversations with each other in a theater.
But those interruptions were what were great.
Yeah,
she clearly has a type.
But we all have that. Yeah. You look at the road when you're driving. You do not speak during the symphonies. It gets you all distracted. I get it. Yeah. That's funny.
I agree a lot with what Rob is saying. So, but I do want to make a special acknowledgement to those kids. Well, first of all, naming a child character Bob is,
love it,
to me, is ballsy and really great, because like, oh, hey Bob. Yep. Sonny's, I don't know how to pronounce his last name properly. Sonny Suljik, and Rafi Cassidy. Their commitment to this style, whether the style works or it doesn't, work, that's debatable. But to have two young actors so completely commit to the style of this, to me, I was just like, yeah, way to go, you guys. That was impressive from a performance standpoint. But yeah, this Joel, one, I was angry. I was angry at you, Michael, for a little while.
That's a legit reaction. We'd have
Joel,
to
that's a great takeaway from this, is those kids are phenomenal at delivering wooden dialogue.
Yeah, Mom, Bob is dying. It's so good.
Yeah.
He's so funny. He made my ribs hurt.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just had my first period.
We'll end this on an Onion headline that I think is funny and goes along with what Joel is saying. Drama breaks out at playground while Aiden and Aiden team up against Aiden.
It's pretty great. All right, we got to move on. Let's
it just shows you Bob is it is deliberately and crazily anachronistic for what we would have, and they make all this mileage out of it. It's great.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, we got to move on. One of the things that Ryan mentioned in the last couple, it was actually in the very first 1982 episode that we did a few years back, because of my costume choices and my mullet and everything that I decided to wear. Ryan rightfully pointed out that 1982 movies that came out in 1982 essentially are still very much the 1970s.
Well, it's a mix.
I mean,
we start to
see
83 is where the 80s, as we think of them from a fashion standpoint, a music standpoint, that sort of thing, is where it pretty much happens.
So the double feature that Ryan had us watch is we're going to talk about these in reverse chronological order, but it's 1981's Absence of Malice and 1982's The Verdict. So first off is The Verdict.
verdict, most requested show that we talk about during the 1982 series. And if you watch those 1982 episodes and you thought we gave the verdict short shift, well, it's because here it is. And we knew it was going to be in the next episode. The verdict's about a down on his luck alcoholic lawyer who trips into a case that has righteousness all over it. And he, like all the great fallen lawyer characters and all the great bits of cinema, no less so than this one, is completely seduced by the righteousness of the case, very often to the detriment of his being able to argue it successfully, or being able to prove it successfully, or frankly being able to do right by his clients most of the film. And to say that isn't to say enough, because it is one of those, it is a throwback to 70s cinema in a way, where it's such a character dominated thing. And it's such a script. It's such a film that started with a completely finished script that was so good that they didn't change it a million times. The suits didn't sit down around a table saying, we need to explain this better. Like, none of that happened here. This was written by David Mamet at the height of his Pulitzer-winning powers. He's gone off the rails a little bit recently, but he wrote some stunning scripts around this time. And directed by Sidney Lumet, who's as good a character-dominated film director. He rehearses films like they're theater. You can feel that precision in each scene. Once they finally get to it, it feels like it's theater that's been worked up into a cohesive thing. And it's just got to die for, cast pretty much up and down the line. And I'll say what I said back in the 82 episode. I'll just repeat it here because it fits. I love young, hot, taking his shirt off, Paul Newman, back in the late 60s and early 70s. And, I love the matinee idol in HUD and in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And I like him in The Sting and everything. But it's kind of starting in The Sting, where he's starting to feel a little older, through this era where he's old. He's an older guy, but he's still a leading man in these movies. These are my favorite performances of his. And he's one of my favorite actors kind of just ever, period. So that's the connection here. But there's some other connections too that we can kind of talk about. But I'll let you guys have it as to what your reaction to the verdict was.
Well, I had never seen the verdict. Obviously, I've been aware of it all these years. I remember that Mad Magazine did the verdict, I think is what they had. So I kind of knew it from that. But I was so super impressed with this. I mean, everything about it worked for me. I think performance-wise, Newman was unbelievable. I was so excited to see Charlotte Rampling again, because we just talked about her a couple of weeks ago for Orca. But just like you said, the rest of the cast is crazy good. Like, every face that shows up, I'm like, oh my God, great. Okay, yeah, great. It was kind of kept unboxing, like, oh, now there's Jack Warden, and it was great. And I was so impressed with this. It was such a good ride. I was also, one thing specific that I'll point out that just tickled me pink was his final summation and the way that it was shot. I have never seen a courtroom drama with that angle of the wideness of the courtroom. You've got the jury, you've got the audience, you've got all of the attorneys, and all in one shot. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen this in a courtroom drama.
The balls to do that, because you just have to live with what you end up with at the end of that, which today's filmmakers want tons of edits, tons of choices. And there's no choice when you do a shot like that.
Yeah. And then they close in slowly on Newman, but the establishing portion of it was just breathtaking. Like, that is so pretty, and I love that they really took the time to set up Newman before everything starts to happen. You don't get that anymore, but he literally has 20 to 30 minutes of, this guy's sick. He's a sicko. He's gross, and
the ambulance chasing and booze. Yeah, just the
him
eye
getting
drops
kicked out of that funeral.
Yeah, and the other thing that I want to point out is, one of the complaints that Elwood and I have frequently is when a female character exists only to support the heterosexuality of the male lead. And I'm like, okay, that's all Charlotte Rampling is. So to my surprise and absolute delight, that wasn't the case. And we were both screaming because we're like, and I think you mentioned this, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but this and Malice, there is a certain scene that is repeated.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's not so much that let's wait. If you guys don't mind, let's wait till we get to Absence of Malice, and then we'll talk about the
right. But I'm saying that all was justified to me. Like it wasn't necessarily pleasant, but it was a nice comeuppance that I appreciated as far as watching the story.
Yeah, as someone who doesn't appreciate comeuppance,
I get it. I see that.
It actually works in the moment better in this movie, I think, than the other one, because the other's got this long, drawn out build up to it. Even though the violence itself is slightly less so in the second one, it's hard to debate that or to rate that. But well, I guess we're talking about it now. Let's just talk about it. There's a female character that just by our ostensibly our hero. This is a very gray matter film, but he just clocks her in the face basically. And my issue with it is not that he does that or that happens. My issue with it is that in both cases the movie seems to be, if not entirely, because they're nuanced films, it seems to be on the side of that being justified somehow. And that's the part I struggle with. It's not so much that, violence against all different people happen. There are reasons why it happens in these stories. It's not taken lightly, but it is sort of like you deserve this somehow. And that
she
part
does. I'm not saying I approve of that, but I'm saying the character did what she did.
Yeah.
He is reacting authentically to what he has discovered. I don't see it out of place. It's not a pleasant moment. But as far as looking at it from the perspective of, Newman's character, I'm like, of course. Yes, that's what you would do.
Yeah, like I said, it's that one extra. It's not really that. It's not in the moment, which I agree with you. Even Joel is nodding. It's that I think when you take a step back, the movie seems to say like, and this was a really weird, we don't do this anymore, but at the time, this was a weird, almost women's lib thing. Hey, you can be in a movie like this and you can be this kind of person and you can get this kind of thing happen to you just like a guy. And there, you see that in the Hill Street Blues, you see it in like the pop culture of the day, and it very quickly went away, which I'm grateful for. And so I appreciate it even in a time capsule thing, but I still, when I watch these movies, and I love them both kind of equally.
Well, I think I
still feel awkward and terrible at both moments because I really feel like the movies, neither of them does that in a way that it is really prepared to. Neither film is prepared to suffer the consequences for that having happened.
Well, I think it's more justified in Verdict than it is in Malice.
I think so too, because it's this. I don't think he even knows he's going to do that when he walks up to her. I really don't.
Because it's a very long pause for him to actually do it.
Yep.
There's something going on there, and I think that's what's interesting about it. And by the way, I'll say one more thing about The Verdict. That is the coolest ending I've ever seen. I couldn't believe it. And I was so thrilled with that abruptness.
It's awesome.
That was great.
It's not like it's open-ended, but it just
that's one of the similarities between that and Malice. It gives
you and even the darkness, the gray and brown world of it. Visually they do share quite a few similarities. Actually, it's urban, but it feels really, really old because the courtrooms are old and the bar he goes to is old and everything.
Yeah,
And I love James Mason's pep talk to his associates. I love that scene to this day. Mason is so great in this.
Well, the moment when Lindsay Krause gets on the stand, and I kept the look on Mason's face is like, I want to frame that and put it up on my wall.
And Jack Warden too. I mean, to me, it's those four people, but everybody is really amazing. That couple that he's trying to help, every time they come on screen,
I don't know the actor's name, but the male counterpart in that couple was the coroner in Arachnophobia. Just a nice.
Yeah, right. And of course, Roxanne Hart was the main squeeze coroner / sword specialist in Highlander.
James Handy is who you're talking about there. James Handy.
Yeah.
But they're both, this is the best movie they were ever in. It's sort of sad. They're both really young. They probably think their whole careers are ahead of them, which they are. But this was the best movie they were ever in. And they're important. We don't spend a lot of time with them, but what their needs are, what their grief is, as opposed to the combative sort of courtroom battle that's going on and how it doesn't really serve them. It's important to see all that, and I really love that about it. So,
Rob?
Okay.
You know, both of these films are just super solid, super good films. The draw for both of them for me is Paul Newman.
Mhm.
It's just, you watch this and it's just like watching a master class in acting. He just becomes whatever character it is. It's recognizably Paul Newman, but he knows how to be on screen. He just knows how to play everything. It just, I try and take some notes when I'm watching films for these, and for both of those, I'm just sucked in by Paul Newman's performances, and I end up with no notes, and I just like, wow, just Paul Newman is what my notes say.
Paul Newman is in this. Yay!
It's just incredible. The verdict for me, the other thing it really accomplishes is this feeling of place and time, and it's, I don't know, it just, the night scenes when he's going to the hospital to try and talk to the doctor, it just feels outside. I can feel like I'm in Fargo outside on a cool winter night, just trying to stay warm. And it just, I don't know, there's something about the cinematography in it too that I don't know who did it, but it's beautiful looking for being such a dingy world.
It's both.
It's cramped office spaces, but it all looks so real and so lived in. And
did the cinematography? It feels like Gordon Willis, but I'm pretty sure that it isn't him, actually.
It does feel like him, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's all these dark profiles, and everyone's shrouded in shadow, and you see the outline of what's outside the window behind them rather than the details on their faces. Stuff like that is very Willis-y, but...
Cinematography by Andrzej Bartwiak.
Yeah. He's good. Very Eastern European. That's actually a fit. I agree.
Obviously, both of these films that Ryan chose, I've seen multiple times. The Verdict, it is definitely a favorite from this period.
Before we move on to Absence of Malice, and we should make sure we're saying Absence of Malice so people don't think we're adding a third Nicole Kidman movie into this. In Malice. But I agree with pretty much everything you guys are saying. I did have a difficult time in watching it this time, just going, oh yeah, well, there's no way the jury would actually find in favor of Paul Newman. That's very strange.
There's no way.
Way.
It's set up by the doctor where he says, you got to just have faith that people will hear the truth. And
Joe Seneca, is that your
fantastic. Line and a fantastic part, and it, so you can halfway buy it, but you're right, there's no way.
And the only other thing I really thought is, and I'm gonna assume that this was in the script like this from the very beginning, but the moment when Jack Warden is revealing something, a wonderful twist to Paul Newman, is done from a massive distance shot, and you don't hear it. And it's spectacular. It's wonderfully done. And all I could think about was how pissed David Mamet must have been that his precious words weren't allowed on the screen. Oh, how
because you're right. There's no chance that Mamet didn't write dialogue.
Mamet absolutely wrote that. And I'm guessing that probably Jack Warden and Paul Newman delivered that dialogue all that distance, and then probably Sidney Lumet probably just went, oh yeah, no, it doesn't need it. This is really great. I like this.
It's great. You're right, though.
Yeah, and Mamet was probably like, my words, how dare he have me drop 14 F-bombs.
He wouldn't have he'd just...
Yeah. Yeah.
That would have been Mamet's reaction.
So we have the verdict, and then we have Absence of Malice, which... we have Sally Field is in this. Sally Field is in this, guys. Sally Field is in this.
She's really the main character of this, I think, a little more than he is, although it's very much a split, you know. Oh no. Joel's memory is failing him, or his
Is he still there? You still there, Joel?
Here, if you guys
There
can
he
just
is.
keep talking. If you can keep talking, yeah, it's hotel internet, so.
Okay, but you just froze up, but you did come back. Let's talk a little bit and see if you can't maybe adjust some things and get a little more power. Absence of Malice. It's. I remember the interviews at the time. People were calling it the anti All the President's Men, which I think is weird. They were. Newman said, "Oh, you should see the way I just stuck it to the press in Absence of Malice." I really think the press, the editor, the lawyer, like they all come off pretty. Certainly, Sally comes off pretty like. I don't know if well-meaning is the word, but absent malice. They really are doing what they think they're supposed to be doing in this situation. Paul Newman's character, not to skip to the end, but in the very famous Deus Ex Brimley ending of the thing, he even says the line,
I'm going to use that
it sounds like everybody was just doing their job, but somebody lost their life. Who do I talk to about that? And that's a really powerful moment from a really movie star, that more so in this movie than the last one, because he doesn't have quite the same amount of baggage. It just is spoken with movie star type authority. I love a big moment like that sums everything up. And I love Sally during this era, and I think that she's thrilled to be in a great movie. This is the other Sidney Pollack directed this, and it's very classy. I think this movie's a little more simple and a little more thematically on the surface for you, but most movies compared to The Verdict are, honestly. That's why I kind of put this one second, because I feel like as a build up to The Verdict, it doesn't suit, but as a come down from it with an equally solid film, it's pretty good. It's a movie you can watch after The Verdict and it can still be its own thing and have a certain amount of power. That's why I picked it as a double feature, and that's why I picked the reverse chronological order that I did. And I love Melinda Dillon, and I always have, and I don't think she's ever better than she is in this. I think she just does what's there in this beautiful, innocent way that she always is in her films and in her characters. She just exudes that. So it's amazing casting, but it's more than that. She's got to carry the weight of the consequences of the thing. You've got to remember her and be mourning her the whole time. And if you lose track of her at all, you lose track of what the movie is, the human carnage of what this stuff is. And of course, Brimley, Bob Balaban and his rubber bands.
Balaban.
Oh my God!
When I was a kid, now I watch it. I'm like, dude, it's a little much, your little business or whatever. When I was a kid, I was like, he's the greatest actor ever. Like I'd never seen anybody just be so choicey and choosy in every line reading and everything. It's technique only, really, but it's delightful acting technique. And I love Joseph Summer. I can't remember the name of who plays the lawyer, but he's fantastic.
Yeah. And
when they sit down and have that scene where he's like, all right, when he comes walking into the newspaper office and throws the thing down, and then they don't show him, oh, let's get the lawyer. The next scene, they're all sitting in a conference room and the lawyer's there. At that intolerable way they talk about this without talking about the real meaning of it, and how a guy who views the world in a sort of simple way and yet is immensely intelligent doesn't get it, doesn't get any answers, doesn't get any satisfaction from that conversation. I love that too. So, and I love even the cheesy lunch boat chase by the guys.
John Harkins. John Harkins is the lawyer.
He's great. I mean, that's awesome stuff. So, all right. Sorry, I'll shut up.
I didn't like this one. I thought their chemistry was -0.
Maybe.
I couldn't buy it. Whereas like Rampling and Newman, I bought it. I think this is one of the lesser Field performances I've ever seen.
Really?
I just, didn't care for her in this
Worse
at all.
than Smoking the Bandit Part 2?
Well, I haven't seen that in a while.
Well, that's the era we're talking about.
Right, but you know what started it off is I didn't buy her cigarette smoking right at the top. I'm like, I'm not really kind of buying you in this. So the only relationship that gave me any pleasure was her relationship with her editor, which I thought was lovely. I can't think of the actor's name. I thought that was
Joseph Summer. Yeah.
Yes. I think that was the most powerful thing in the film, other than Dylan's scene with Field out at the park. I didn't like this. It didn't click for me at all. I felt it was kind of boring and just kind of wishy-washy, and it didn't push. Like The Verdict, I was invested from start to finish. This, I liked certain things, and but the main thing that was a problem for me is that they had no chemistry. I thought Newman was fantastic, and I thought I was going to die at how handsome he was in this film. And but it was I don't know. I mean, you mentioned the fact that the characters in the press are all pretty well-meaning, but I didn't necessarily like her. I mean,
right. That I think that's appropriate. You know, they know they're being played and they roll with it anyway. I mean, they do make those choices, but that's in their compartmentalized world. Those are the choices that you make. And the film, I think, from a plot standpoint, it's written by a newspaper man. Sets up the issues, like it comes up with this example of a thing that sets up those issues in that debate. The debate over the press's responsibility, this, that, the other thing. I mean, it's quaint. It's like when you go back and watch broadcast news now, it's still brilliant. But the kernel of the thing that's the tragedy, that's the crime of it, is just silly by today's standards. It's because just the world has gone off the rails in terms of its integrity, but I still, as a period piece, which this is very much, I still find value in this story and in that debate. And I think they personified that as well as you can. I don't know about chemistry. To me, that's always been an overrated thing, but that might explain why I like this so much better than you, because I can't really deny that they're awkward around each other completely and almost all the time. But I thought that was what it was supposed to be in a way.
Well, the other thing that I had a problem with the score. I know it's Grusin, right? And the score is also tonally weird to me, and it set me up for things that didn't pay off, like the kind of goofiness of her boarding the ship for the lunch. I'm like, is this supposed to be a rom? I'm like, I was very confused by things, and Grusin's score misled me numerous times, and I found that really irritating. And the last thing I'll say, which was one of my favorite parts of the movie, is when they part ways in the end of the film and she turns back, Newman has already turned away, and I thought that was a brilliant choice. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't watching her go. She turns back and he's already on his way. And I thought that was beautiful. Yeah. But I just, overall, I didn't like this film very much. That's my take.
Oh,
Anyone
Rob.
else?
Okay. Paul Newman.
I mean, Paul Newman, right on the path.
He's great in this. He's better in The Verdict.
Yeah. He's rarely been better than he is in The Verdict. I mean, that really is a stunner.
I would have flipped these in terms of double feature, because I think after The Verdict, it's, Absence of Malice doesn't compare. I'd like it. I don't feel the way Michael did, where I didn't connect or whatever and stuff. But I do agree with the chemistry aspect. And I think that is something that it either works or it doesn't work. And even if it works in the film, it works for some people and it doesn't for others. It's a personal thing. It's like who you're attracted to. In real life, it just is, and you can't explain it or whatever. And if you're supposed to feel that, and maybe you're not in this one as much. Maybe you're supposed to.
Maybe you are, but to me, it's not the central thing. This isn't a wacky romantic comedy where a reporter and a gangster's kid meet up and fall in love.
Yeah,
it's important that their interactions be effective, but and there is the film. It's not like it's not romantic. It's just that's not what it is. The movie doesn't shouldn't rely on that, and I don't think that it does. And so, I even think the movie in the end, as Michael sort of pointed out, I mean, it lets you have it either way. If you want to think they're going to meet up again in the future, it leaves that door wide open for you. But it also demonstrates that they've come to an ending of this thing very much, and if you want to believe that's it, that's there for you as well. So, you know,
I really
doesn't rely on that sort of payoff.
I really don't think that it needed them to hook up the film. I think it would have been a better film if that hadn't happened. It would have kept it on the theme of the paper and what the press's responsibilities are.
It would have been a braver, better story, and it wouldn't even been that different. Like it just if they didn't, I'm with you there.
If you took that out of there, that's a couple of scenes that you lose.
Well, it's also the fact that I think it's a misstep by having them hook up romantically based on his relationship with the Melinda Dillon character. How can you get past that?
They've never hooked up.
No, I'm not saying they did. I'm saying, but his friendship with her and what he is perceived as what she did. I don't see how you can get past that ever. You know, even if there are sparks that don't really actually exist.
I say, people do though, but in a cinematic way, I get what you're saying. People don't typically in the movies, they wouldn't. That's where the other assault on a woman comes. And this one's more, it's weirder and clumsier and more drawn out, but she, I don't want to spoil the big thing that happens in the movie, but it's hard not to by even talking about this. But he, again, is given reason. He's really given reason to be infuriated with her by what the story elements. And he even warns her, you shouldn't be here. Get out of here. I'm warning you.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that scene so much. It's the scene later where he brings her a present and says he's not going to apologize. Like that scene's weird. And from the movie standpoint, I feel like the movie's trying to justify that bit of violence. And I don't think even given the crazy, it's human and I get it, but given the crazy circumstances, the movie, not the story, but the movie can't justify that. And have me sit comfortably with it. And I feel like from a step back from what's going on in the story, the movie says, no, that was an appropriate way to react. And it isn't.
Well, I mean, on that note, though, I think it's her best moment in the film is her reaction to what has just happened in the violent scene.
He really hurt her on the set of that film, and she didn't tell him because she didn't want to upset him. This is just sexual politics of 1981 all over in real life on the set of this thing. She had a point. She's making this movie with him. She's not angry with him, but she was really assaulted and still was like, you know, we don't want to, that's if that even comes up, that's all we're going to deal with for the next 2 weeks. Like as an artist, Sally was savvy enough to understand that she should, to make her own choice as to whether she should react to that or not. Again, it wasn't like it wasn't rehearsed or, you know, they're a couple of old school actors that got really into it. And you feel that in the movie. It's really disturbing and awful. And then there's that moment where she's leaving and he says that line that just breaks my heart every time I hear it. And it's amazing that I can have this reaction after that struggle that they have. But didn't you like her?
Yeah.
It's just such a, you know, even in that stupid Deep Impact movie, you know, James Cromwell has that line, I know you're a reporter, but you used to be a human being.
Yeah, to me, I will say, to me, that's one of the big things about this movie is that she literally can never be a person. Yeah. She is a reporter first at all times, and she even says that to Dylan's character. You know who you're talking to, don't you? Yeah. I mean, she tries to play. You're talking to a newspaper right now, and it's infuriating because you're just like, what a sad way to live. What a sad way to live. But this movie, you know, real quick, we do have to move on. I will quickly agree though with Ryan. One of the best aspects of this movie is the fact that we now have the phrase Deus ex Brimley. And if it doesn't,
I don't know what else you can call it.
I don't know what else, but if you have it in another movie and it doesn't work, it becomes a diabetes ex Brimley.
Oh my God. I will say this real quick about Wilford Brimley, whom I love.
Yeah.
I thought he was so ridiculously over the top, and I almost couldn't take it. And I love Brimley. I love Lisa Brimley.
So
and this scene, and I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm sorry for the love of Christ. Sorry, blah blah blah. Transcriptionist. I'm like, all right, no. Anyway.
So yeah, he's so Brimley.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, and yet I can't relate to what you're saying. I loved it.
Yeah,
but I
so
get
joyous.
what you're saying. It's like, as always, the criticism is on point, but the feeling I get is just overwhelms.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree with both of you.
Yeah.
All right, next up is our final two movies of this double feature. Are my choices, and God, I hope Michael liked at least one of them. And these are movies about how music affects it plays such an integral part in our lives and in shaping us and who we are. My movies are 2000s High Fidelity and 2019's Blinded by the Light. High Fidelity is the story of Rob, played by John Cusack. He's a record store owner and compulsive list maker, and he recounts his top 5 breakups, including the one in progress. And Blinded by the Light is the story of an English teenager in 1997 from an Asian family, learns to live his life, understand his family, and find his own voice through the music of American rock star Bruce Springsteen.
We lost you again, Joel.
Oh, damn it. I knew that was going to happen as soon as I'm like...
We didn't hear that, buddy. Sorry.
Didn't hear any of it?
As soon as you decided you wanted to talk, your computer was like, nope, F you, Joel. Your movie
Really? Really? Oh, yeah. Man. Well, this is why we have a backup recording. Hopefully.
High Fidelity. We heard the setup for that.
High Fidelity and Blinded by the Light
is the story of a young Pakistani Englishman who yearns for something different than his humdrum existence and finds inspiration through the music of Bruce Springsteen. I made that synopsis up, but is that cool?
It's pretty darn good. That's pretty close to even just the IMDb one.
Okay, cool.
Hotel.
So slowly,
internets.
Joel, without moving around very much, because your camera doesn't like that.
Yeah, apparently.
What do you love about this, and why this double feature?
Yeah, to me, High Fidelity is one of these movies that as I've been growing into adulthood, it is that idea of letting go or coming to grips with what you think is the fantasy of your life. What is it that you think your life is going to be versus what your life actually is, and how difficult that can be sometimes to reconcile the two. And High Fidelity.
Nick Hornby wrote it.
Yeah, Nick Hornby is the writer of High Fidelity, and and then this one, he's a man child who is just absolutely obsessed with what he thinks his life should be, and he's
anchored by the disappointment of that, basically. It's not that he can't make friends or that he can't attract beautiful women but he can't sustain those things because there's this kernel of unhappiness at the core of who he is. And Joel, I didn't think about this, but this is the way you said it is perfect. It's because it's because he's not come to grips. It really is the difference between, to me, Nick Hornby writes the same story over and over again. And what he's ultimately saying is, if you don't change, if you don't evolve, if you don't roll with the changes to some degree, you get stuck and nothing really can go right for you. And this movie's like that too. But the difference really is that in About a Boy, which we watched last Christmas, where the guy's just in a rut that is very comfortable to him, this guy's tormented by his own disappointment. And and people want his girlfriend in the movie, who's played by somebody I don't think I've ever seen in any other movie.
Right. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I can't even conceive of how to pronounce this last name. Iban Gvie. She's a Danish actress.
She's very impressive in it. She's the catalyst. She just stays on him every time it feels like, oh, I'm obsessed with my ex-girlfriend, but it isn't that. You grow to learn that this is unfinished. There's something here that's meaningful and it's unfinished, and neither of them can really properly let go of it because of that. And yet she's come to the realization that as it is, she can't stay with him. And that part of the frustration with the movie, although this on its own is wonderful, part of my frustration with the movie is the way that is divorced from the rest of his life somehow. They're like two different things, which I think it makes it oversimplifies it to some degree. Although it doesn't, because all the other stuff in his life is so entertaining. Like, this movie's so fun and funny and entertaining. You know what I mean? Like that, I'm not complaining, but I just wish in About a Boy, all this stuff melds together in this amazing collision of emotion and stuff. And in this movie, it's very compartmentalized and stuff. And even his big change into accepting his life, spoiler alert, I guess, although it happens 2/3 of the way through the movie, it isn't because of that. It's like a thing where he finally listens, or something happens, something snaps, but I don't feel like we see that moment happen. And part of that is Hornby writes in this way that he writes first person, and in About a Boy, it's all voiceover. In this, it's more like and went the day well, where it's all a direct address, which is really tough to do in films. It's fun. It's fun direct address because it's so well written. It's like Ferris Bueller kind of. That's a cheap comparison, but that's a comparison we can all relate to.
It's a fair one. I think it's fair.
Yeah.
But that keeps you to me anyway, that keeps you at bay a little bit from what's going on with him internally. And I'll say one other thing, Joel. I don't want you to think I'm ripping on this movie. High Fidelity is a fantastic movie. Nick Hornby is a fantastic writer. John Cusack produced this and adapted it, and had his heart and soul was into it. You can feel a really, really good actor really, really wanting to sell the central ideas. And the central ideas in this movie work. I spent my whole life, though, in record stores, you guys, and Hornby has as well. But what you see in this movie is a really, really cheap stereotype of what that is like.
Yeah.
And that, even though that's super entertaining, because stereotypes are pretty fun, and Jack Black is really great. And who's the other guy, his cohort?
Dick.
He's even better.
Yeah. Dick. Todd Luiso.
He's even better. He's even better. It's so fun, but I wish it was a little more nuanced.
My thought on this is the first time viewing, and my main takeaway as far as an issue, because I also really enjoyed this. I loved the supporting cast, Jack Black, Tim Robbins. It was all so much fun.
Yeah.
My issue is that Cusack's character is a douchebag.
Yeah, he is.
And that's a really hard thing to pull off, and I don't think they succeeded here. If you're going to follow this guy along, you kind of want to like him, but he's a stalker and he's a baby. And I'm like, I don't like you, even though I really, really liked Cusack's performance. Like, it was very hard to kind of get around the fact that I don't like this guy. You know, you're making stupid choices and you're not growing up. And I found it irritating, not only for that, but then the fact that I enjoyed so much else of it. I had a really good time. And the other thing I want to point out is the actress that you mentioned, the lead, I don't know who lit her, but that was the most glorious, beautiful lighting. Every time she showed up, it was angelic. It was so pretty. And the other thing I want to mention that, and I just thought, I didn't know this was a Frears film, even though I did when the name came up. I'm like, wait, Stephen Frears? And then I realized, yeah, you did know that. But this is where I started the film. I'm sitting down to watch this with my husband, and I'm like, yeah, so Anthony LaPaglia and Renee Zellweger and Maxwell Caulfield are in this. I'm really excited with John Cusack.
Oh,
no clue that, I mean, literally halfway through, I'm like, when did these people show up? Not realizing that it was Empire Records, which I've never seen. So I'm like, in my head, these are conflated, and I think they came around the same time, right?
Sort of ish.
So
this came quite a bit later, and is a different kind of movie, but
I'm sure, but it's in my head. That's what I was watching. I had no clue, but I really enjoyed this. Jack Black, I think, was kind of my standout, and generally in films, and I get it, it makes sense here, because a lot of films when I was reviewing, it irritated me when characters would talk knowledgeably about music and film, because it just felt like this is the filmmaker writer talking about their knowledge. And I always found it to be so cheap. I mean, obviously it makes sense in this, and I didn't have that issue. It made sense because that's their life. But
well, Hornby, and this is in his book too, he starts the movie by having a normal guy come in looking for a normal record and getting shunned and belittled, and having that guy stand up for himself to these dickheads in the store is important. Like, it's important that that's there, because he's telling you it even though this is what this is about, this isn't really okay. And if that scene weren't there, I agree. I think the whole rest of it would really miss something. He doesn't just have that happen. He starts with it, and and Frears knows, and Cusack knows, that's not a throwaway moment from the book.
Sure.
That's really, really important, and very.
It shows.
And you're right, Michael.
Talking down to you, you know.
Yeah, and you're right, Michael. I mean, it does show what a douchebag he is. These are music snobs. These are absolute snobs. And when the other guy comes in and kind of calls them on it, they're like, yeah, but we're right. So, it's like, okay, yeah. I want to throw this to Rob. Rob and I actually had our own little private conversation about this movie after because he and I happened to like rewatch it on the same day, I think. Yeah. And we were texting back and forth. Rob, talk about High Fidelity, and then we'll move on to Blinded by the Light.
Well, first of all, this was one of my favorite books before the movie came out. And when I read that they were making a movie but transplanting it from London to Chicago, I was pissed. I'm like, no, I mean, this is a British film. This is a British story. These are British characters. And I was amazed when the movie came out how well it translated. That I didn't feel like we lost anything. So I love the film when it came out. I had seen it several times, but it's been quite a while. I watched it again, and I loved it. How did I forget how fun this movie is?
Yeah.
And I have to take issue with what you guys were saying about John Cusack's character being a douchebag. First of all, he's the one who stands up to Jack Black's character about the guy that they belittle.
Yeah, but he's his boss, and does he really stand up to him? He yells at him, but there are no real consequences for it.
He hired them for a few hours a week, and they just keep showing up.
I know, I get it.
Well, let me correct you real quick, because Joel kind of said it's like, yeah, they're a douchebag about the music, snobbery, which we're movie snobs, I think, generally, so that's fine. I didn't have an issue with that. I'm saying the way that he interacted with the girlfriend and all that, and the stalking. That's what I didn't care about him being a music snob.
He's a very petty guy
there as well. I think in a drama we allow people to have flaws.
Yeah.
And in the comedy, we won't accept a character that's maybe a little more complex, particularly in something that is as surfacely fun as this is. I think he's showing that, yeah, I did that. I was a dick about it. And he acknowledges it. And I think we all do things like that, really.
And
we
not to compare,
don't accept it in a film character.
Not to compare these again, but in About a Boy, it's the same character, essentially. It's not the same, but it is kind of the same. And Hugh Grant and the Englishness of it softens it to a degree that it doesn't make him not a douche at all. Yeah. But it softens it. Because it has Nick's language and all that stuff. It's
definitely. Would I have looked at this differently if I'd seen this when it was released when I was 26?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I mean, probably. I don't think so, because you got out of it what is there, which is these actors are great, doing good work, and the thing is super entertaining and fun. I mean, that is primarily what it was, but it is something more as well. And that part that's more didn't work perfectly with me because I think the turn was too sudden, and it didn't work perfectly with you because the guy wore out his welcome before it happened.
Certainly.
I think that doesn't make it a bad movie, but that's legit way of looking at it at the same time.
Well, that's what I told to Rob in our other conversation. It is kind of exactly what Michael was talking about. Is I loved this movie. This movie helped me make that connection to that I was living. I was not reconciling what my life was with what I thought it should be. This movie is a very important movie to me, just on a very personal level. I also think it's a lot of fun, and I love Nick Hornby, and I think, Ryan, you're right. There's a definite evolution in his writing that he sort of tells this character story, this type of character story, better in About a Boy. But one of the things I wrote when I wrote to Rob is, I'm like, oof, boy, it has been a while since I've watched High Fidelity, and boy, that character is hard to go on this journey with him, because he is creepy. He is a creep. The constant phone calls and screaming at the windows and stuff. It's like, I'm supposed to root for you. Yeah. But again, it goes back to this, and then if you really step away and get meta about it, then you're like, oh, well, that's him, expressing this fantasy. He's like, oh, I should be able to yell at the window, and then, oh, our relationship. But no, in the moment when you're telling this story, none of it works. None of it works.
And she encourages him not to do those things at all. But she doesn't cut him out of her life ever, because she always brings it back to these simple, subtle conversations that are really about who they are. And I'll just say one last thing about High Fidelity, because to me, it's the best moment in the thing. It's the moment that really, really works, when she finds that old list and she gets to the bottom of it and she says, I own my own record store. Why isn't that here? Yeah, that's Nick's voice speaking through this wise woman, maybe too wise. It's hard to say. She really is kind of the perfect, she's the perfect everything, perfect counselor, perfect object of desire, but whatever. She's a
manic pixie dream girl fantasy.
And she doesn't come into his life and shake things up, though. He lets him do his shit. And then she says, now, so she's more like a therapist. Yeah. But that question, and you see it work on John, because he really is an extraordinary actor. You know what? Could that have been something at this age, when you wrote this list, that you'd have been excited to find out that in Chicago you owned your own record store, and that was your thing? Like, it's not nothing. It's actually a pretty cool thing. And it gets right to the heart of that. Accept a little what your life is like, or you have no possibilities. That's a really wise thing that comes through this movie that I really, really love, even though it's a little clumsier here than it is in some of his other work.
I think for me, I relate to his character a lot.
Me too.
I'd love to make
his problems anyway. I definitely relate to.
And I've had those moments where I'm looking back on old relationships and why did I leave that one? And that's just something that plays over in your head and stuff. And I think at my age now, I'm getting to where he is finally starting to address of that. Why don't I just try and be happy with what I am doing? And
I can tell you guys can't relate to this, any three of you, but when you're alone, it's all you think about. There's my confessional moment. It is all you think about. You don't think about anything else. You engage with the things that are happening, but when the world gets quiet and you're left with your own thoughts, why is all you think about? It's all you think about. And so I really did relate to that part of this, and really all of his, especially this, because I found that scene where he goes and finds his high school sweetheart, and I found that terrible, even though he just kind of is, at the end of it, when she goes off on her kind of rant. But that idea that I want to figure this all out, and it's terrible advice he gets from that guy who was like, well, just go for it. It's like, no, don't.
Favorite moment is the phone call to the junior high girlfriend's mom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
so I want to hear what you guys. Let's move on to Blinded by the Light, because this one is not knowing at all who you are and how music helps you find. Music can help you find your voice, find who you are, and help you discover who you could be in this life. So Blinded by the Light. Go. Who? Go.
Okay,
I am revved up like a douche
in
to talk about this movie.
Okay. Well, go ahead. Otherwise, you just talk over me. So you go first, Rob.
No, you go first, Rob. I'll almost never go first. I just wanted to get my cheesy pun in. I apologize.
This was when Joel and I texted because I just finished this. I had watched High Fidelity 2 days before. But after I saw this was the other film I had never seen before. I texted him and I thanked him for the film. And I said, beautiful, joyful, moving. I'm still smiling. I loved this film. This probably, it's hard to compare this to The Verdict or whatever, but I just found this film so rewarding. It captured so many emotions. Just this whole idea of connecting through someone else's creativity and it sparking your own. And the moments those happen where they use text from the lyrics swirling around him as he's listening, he's alone, and you can see him internalizing it. I've had that moment so many times that just felt like, oh, I can relate to this. This is so powerful. The sections where it's almost like a musical, where he sings with Rob Brydon, who I love, and I love seeing him in this small role.
Always. Rob's always great when he shows up.
Yeah, when he joins in and sings, which one is it? Thunder Road, to the girl. That moment, it's like, yes, I've had that fantasy in my head where you
seeing Dean Charles Chapman too, to a lesser degree, not to cut you off, but seeing him see his buddy who's looked after and kept under his wing, like connecting with his father in a way that he never has and probably never will. The agony of that it's also happening in that same scene, and the whole thing is really, really effective.
Yeah, that section, and I mean the girl that he falls in love with. Who's the actress? I wrote it, Nell Williams.
Yep, Nell Williams.
I've never seen her in anything else. Oh, I love her. I want to go back in time and fall in love with her. She's just fantastic.
She's pretty neat.
And I want to sing that song to her in the middle of a crowded marketplace. And I want Rob Brydon to join in because he has a better voice than I do. And when they're doing Born to Run, they put it on in the school radio station and lock the doors, and then they run through the town. This is the aspect of the film that is going to turn off a lot of people. They can't go with it. I just fucking loved those moments. I felt so joyful and uplifted. And I've watched the film twice now. And I watched it the first time like 3 or 4 weeks ago. It just connected with me on this level that you cannot analyze, that you cannot explain. I love films about the creative process and what sparks our imagination. And I felt like this worked for me. And I think it's going to be a film that either works for you or it doesn't. If you can relate to it, the way it presents that, having that fire lit within you, or having someone else's art inspire you, then you're going to love it. If you can't, if it's just not how you internalize those things, this probably doesn't work for you. But I was smiling the next day after this. I just loved this movie. It was so joyful. It's counter-programming to Michael's films, which are very accomplished films.
Oh, I should have done Birth and Blinded by the Light.
They're not feel-good movies. Both of these are just fun and joyful, and sometimes that's really what you want in a film. I like darker films and more challenging films, and all the films we saw on here had value for sure. But these are just like, this raises my spirit up, and oh God.
All right, Ryan and Michael don't get to talk about this film because I'm just want to leave it here on this happy note. All right, see you everybody. Bye.
We don't have a lot of time, Michael, but do your take real quick.
I won't say what I said on a previous podcast where I said I hated something because then I felt bad. I greatly disliked this film. It was, I'll use the term saccharine again. And I loved Bend It Like Beckham, and I feel like it's a very similar film, same filmmaker, and I had no issue with that. I was joyful, just the way Rob was talking about for Bend It Like Beckham. This, I'm like, okay, can we just hit every single possible thing for this kind of story? Supportive teacher, downsized, father who doesn't believe outside of, I'm like, can we just not do this again? And production values are good. I mean, the actors were all good, but I was bored. I'm like, I like the message. I did like his trajectory of becoming self-confident because of his Springsteen addiction. But by the end, I'm like, I have seen this story at least 1,000 times. It didn't connect with me. And I was very happy when it ended there. And one more thing.
Hate it. We have that on the.
Well, but the other thing is, like, they made such a big deal about the trip to New Jersey, and I guess I understand the point was to see all the Springsteen stuff, but we have not gotten a glimpse of the thing that he went for. That was kind of a big deal. Like, why? So we just suddenly they're home. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Not only that, all we got was a photo montage and yet another music video.
Yeah. What
but
Joel had in front of his face, so I thought he was mocking me.
You're not wrong about that. And again, your criticism, Dora, but it is an inspiring movie. Like it is that, and it does follow all of those tropes, and it does, in my opinion, go a little too far with really all of them, kind of every step of the way. So I get that. There's something I really, really loved about it. I really love, I mean, this is a cliche too, but it's important that the movie does this at some point. His article that he writes about the racial unrest during this time period, which is something the movie doesn't gloss over it, but the movie, in trying to be an inspiring, positive thing, doesn't dive into the horror of it very comfortably. Yeah. But it really was a serious thing. Margaret Thatcher, in a way, some of our recent leaders was kind of down with the traditionalist, maybe not the skinheads, but the traditionalist British people, like kind of rising up against their own citizenry, which was super distasteful. And it was really, really frightening at the time. The fact that he comes into his own through that, it does skip his take on that. We're not privy to what the article even is. It's a little frustrating, but it's still important that it's that. And then of course it's the moment for me, and when I started crying. So this movie worked on me. I don't super love it either, but it absolutely, I'm sitting there with tears running down my face and I got to take my glasses off. I mean, okay, movie, you win. You got me fair and square. He puts that speech down. The film has to show that it isn't enough to be inspired or obsessed with another artist, or to be galvanized by a different work of art. You eventually have to find your own voice. There's people saying literally that throughout the thing, but we need to see the proof of it. And that moment really sort of shows that. And I was tremendously moved by that, by the family coming in at the end. It was staged a little, obviously, and I get that. But as far as inspiration, it is a cheesy inspirational film, but as far as cheesy inspirational films go, I think it's first rate. So I enjoyed it very much and was glad that I was, because I don't know if I'd have watched it otherwise. I was really glad to have been compelled, because I would have looked at it. I would have seen a 2-minute trailer of it and I've been like, oh, it's that.
Yeah.
And it is that.
I mean, I admit it absolutely is that.
But it's a little more than that. It really is really super neat. I liked it.
My thing is, and I know it's based on a true story, so it couldn't necessarily go in this direction.
Hold on. It's
based on the incredible true story.
There you go.
Thank you. No, we needed that. Now it's official, Michael. Go ahead.
I'm like thinking that this is moving toward the fact that he'll end up writing a song that Springsteen will record. That's where in my head this is going.
Well, that would have made it super
amazing.
Cheesy.
I know, but I would have bought into that.
No.
But it just
that shows no knowledge of him, where he comes from in life, or frankly Springsteen, who's, to my knowledge, only done one cover ever.
Right, but I'm saying if it's fiction anyway,
Right.
you know.
So there's a couple of connections between your double features, Joel, that I don't know if you're aware. Well, everybody's aware that Bruce Springsteen had a little cameo in High Fidelity.
Yeah.
That was a cool
awesome.
bridge. But the earliest film I've seen of Stephen Frears in his filmography, not the first one I ever saw, was Sammy and Rosie Get Laid, which is all about Thatcherism and what was going on in England at this time.
That is a jewel of the Nile alligator, if I've ever heard it.
It is kind of, but a welcome one. Any chance to shit on Margaret Thatcher, I say,
correct.
Let's go for it. Let's get it in there.
Yeah, and I will say one of the things that excited me about this movie it is absolutely everything that frankly all of you are saying. But we've seen this story 1,000 times, and we've seen this story done better in many times. I just always love to see it, frankly, with people who we don't normally get to see this kind of joyous, wonderful sort of fluff. I mean, this movie is fluff. And we get to experience it with its fluff with some curry.
That when they go to the daytime club, that's my favorite musical. There's no Springsteen there, although a little, I guess there is, right? But that's my. I remember that. I remember sneaking out. I remember having your kit in the car and dressing different and just going someplace to be yourself and be different. And the weight of it, because there's a racial component to it, and because of the time that the story takes place, really, really landed with me. So I love that sequence as well.
So all right. Well, I think that is a good place to end our double feature episode. We can always, of course, end it with Rob and Michael and Ryan and Joel double feature. And we hope that you check out. Well, frankly, I hope you check out all of these films, but I sure hope that we have inspired you to take a look at some of these films that you hope, if you haven't seen them, I think they're worth a look. And
don't watch Killing of a Sacred Deer before you go to bed.
Yeah, don't watch it before you go to bed.
You've been warned.
Yep. And yeah, just make sure you're ready. Make sure you're ready.
Not a good first date movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't take it on a first date.
More like a third date movie.
Yeah. So that is going to do it. Ryan, Rob, and Michael, thank you so much once again for joining us for a double feature episode. I'm sure we will have another one of these coming up as soon as we can find a day that we're all free.
Maybe Halloween at the latest.
Yeah. So, all right, that is going to do it for us for this week. You can always reach out to us at the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook, at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page here on YouTube. If you are watching the video feed, give us a like and subscribe at all these places. Tell everybody, go ahead, give us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast content. We will gladly take it. So we thank you all very much. And until next time, everybody, that's Movie Show with Joel and Ryan and Rob and Michael.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.
Rob and Michael and